I want to talk today about these increasing reports about attacks and harassment directed toward Asian Americans here in the United States. To track these incidents, the Asian Pacific Policy and Planning Council, APCON, reported recently that they received over 1,000 reports of harassment related to coronavirus by Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the U.S. over a 2-week period. That's between about 80 to 100 incidents per day. Because of the unknown, uncertainty, the anxiety around COVID-19, people have been behaving in ways that, based on their personal experience, based on what information they have, to try to respond to this highly infectious disease. Unfortunately, many of the kind of everyday responses that you have, or we all have, center on stigmatized identities. There have also been incidents in other communities of color, these African American, particularly males, responding that because they're wearing masks, that they've been getting negative response by police. Michael Omi from UC Berkeley and Howard Wynant from UC Santa Barbara wrote a very important book called Racial Formation in the United States. They categorize race into 4 different elements. Race as biology is the sort of typical way we understand race. Race is physical characteristics, as genetic makeup, it's sort of the way people look. The second category is race as ethnicity. You may carry race as biology, having physical characteristics, but you may also carry race as ethnicity through cultural practices, food, celebrations, etc. The third element is race as nation state, and this is where the idea that the COVID-19 pandemic is labeled in a certain way becomes important. The Trump administration has repeatedly described the COVID-19 disease and the novel coronavirus as Chinese flu, Wuhan flu. They've used this kind of nation-state identification, and the argument is that, well, it originated in China, so we should call it Chinese flu because that's what it is. Whenever you use race as biology, race as ethnicity, or race as nation-state, you're engaging what they call racial projects. And what racial projects are when you use these other elements to further an objective or goal that you might have. But there's a connection between naming something as Chinese flu and potentially people thinking that Chinese people may be associated with this Chinese flu. And so therefore Chinese flu can then inform us as thinking that Chinese-looking people or Asian-looking people may be carriers of this disease. What are the elements of stigma that relate to COVID-19 is that the disease itself is seen as very dirty. And the more we transfer that information, that sort of stigmatized label to people, like Chinese flu again, the more that those labels tend to stick. Herbert Gans, who's another famous sociologist, anthropologist, talked about stereotypes. You start with a small kernel of truth about a few people. You distort, expand, and scale that to be large imagined untruths about lots of people. And number one thing I have on my mind is please support Asian American businesses. When you see others experiencing harassment, try to be an ally. And in terms of policy, please support and advocate for anti-discrimination policies and laws. Be aware of the power of labels and try to use non-stigmatizing labels if you can. This is hard too. Resist your common sense about peoples and places. Really relying on science and reliable information is going to help us get through this pandemic.